This is the sort of article that any educated ancient Egyptian would have been glad to carry on him. It is a scribe's writing palette, but a very swagger one, made of ivory and elegantly inscribed with the name of its owner, Queen Meritaten. She was the oldest sister of Tutankhamun, the wife of Tutankhamun. Howard Carter found it in a somewhat peculiar place, at the threshold of the innermost treasury of the tomb, between the four paws of the black dog Anubis on his shrine. Presumably, it was put there by one of the inspectors who cleared up the tomb after it had been ransacked by thieves about a dozen years after the death of Tutankhamun. The inspector probably forgot to repack it, and as he was working in frantic haste and by the light of a guttering lamp, we may perhaps forgive him. The palette has a vertical slot for holding the rush pens, and 6 oval depressions for red, black, blue, green, yellow, and white pigments. Meritaten used it when she was a child because it bears her title as a princess, and she became the queen of Tutankhamun's predecessor when she was about 14 years old.
In the same chamber, Carter also found a row of storage boxes. One of them was particularly elegant. According to the ancient label written on it, it should have contained precious gold and silver toilet vessels, but these had been stolen. In their place, the inspectors had thrust, among other things, some writing equipment, including ivory writing palettes and a pen case in the form of a palm leaf column. All these things are vivid reminders that the ancient Egyptian pharaohs and their queens, unlike many medieval European kings, were well able to read and write. There are Old Kingdom pyramid texts that speak of the pharaoh as acting as the scribe of the sun god in the other world.
I sit before Ra. I open his portfolios. I break the seals of his decrees and seal up his dispatches. I send forth his tireless runners. I do whatever he dictates to me.
So says King Wenis in an elegant column of hieroglyphs on the north wall of the antechamber of his pyramid. Hieroglyphic is the name given to the sort of writing seen here. The words are spelled out with picture signs derived from real things like birds, snakes, human hands, and so on. The king's name appears frequently, enclosed within an oval design that Egyptologists call a cartouche. King Wenis's pyramid, where all these texts appear, is one of the later ones of the Old Kingdom and rather badly ruined now. There was every reason why the royal family should have learnt reading and writing. Writing was considered a divine skill. The patron god of writing was Thoth, the scribe of the gods. He is usually shown as a man with the head of the ibis bird, and he often holds the writing palette of the scribe. He was the messenger of the gods, the means whereby their decrees were promulgated and their ideas given tangible form. Without the art of writing and the bureaucracy of scribes who practiced the art, the highly centralized organization of ancient Egypt would not have been possible. The importance of the scribes is shown by their frequent portrayal in the tombs of the nobles seated at their work. The nobles themselves were often shown as scribes. And the role of Thoth among the gods is a reflection of the importance of the scribes on earth. The baboon of Thoth, closely associated with the calendar and with recording of all kinds, is sometimes shown sitting on the shoulders of a scribe as his inspiration. The character that writing took in Egypt was due to the invention of a remarkable material, one of the great contributions of the Egyptians to civilization, papyrus. From the pith of the stem of the papyrus plant, the Egyptians had learned more than 5,000 years ago how to make a flexible paper. This was not superseded until the 11th century AD. They used to collect the papyrus sedge tied up in bundles, as copies of some of their pictures show. Using only the sort of bronze knife and wooden tools that the Egyptians possessed, a British Museum technician is able to employ today exactly the same process that they used. First, the papyrus stem is cut into standard lengths, according to an ancient Egyptian measuring rod. There was always plenty of raw material, for the papyrus plant grew in great profusion on the undrained verges of the cultivated land. The next step in the ancient Egyptian paper-making process is to peel away the outer layers of the stem to reveal the pith. Only the lower parts of the stems are suitable for paper-making. The pith is sliced up into narrow strips and laid down on a wooden block. The strips are first laid down all in one direction as parallel pieces. Care has to be taken to see to it that no pieces of the green outer layer get into the material, as these would spoil the surface of the finished paper. Only 2 layers of strips are needed. The second series is laid down across the direction of the first ones. No glue or other adhesive is used. The 2 layers are eventually bonded together by the natural action of the sap and the physical structure of the pith under the continuous force of prolonged pounding with a wooden mallet. A good deal of pounding is necessary before the strips are really welded together into a thin piece of paper. The ancient Egyptians, like ourselves, produced their paper in standard sizes, and sheets could be pasted together into rolls. The final stage of manufacture was smoothing the paper into an even surface ready to be written upon in an ink usually made from lamp black and gum. In the Valley of the Kings at Thebes, there are wall paintings which imitate the appearance of papyrus with writing on it. This tomb has the Book of What is in the Underworld on its walls, as though written out on papyrus sheets. Other tombs in the Royal Valley are decorated in a similar way. The walls of the funerary chamber of King Tutmosis III are painted as though a very ancient copy of the same book had been unrolled against them, and the background is painted yellow to show its antiquity. But all the evidence is that the art of writing was developed not so much to create works of literature as to preserve complex records and documents. No other nation of antiquity had such a convenient means as papyrus for retaining a memory of its past and documenting every aspect of its life and activities. The Egyptians were able to develop filing systems and keep repositories of records for hundreds of years. Whatever the activity of any section of ancient Egyptian society, there was a scribe on hand to record it, among the artisans and sculptors in their studios, or out on the land with the agricultural workers. The scribe was always there, noting everything down. The tools of his trade were extremely compact and portable. He could carry with him his bag of writing equipment and bundles of papyrus, his pen cases and pallets. Despite the wealth of papyri that exist in the storerooms of most great museum collections, The mass that has survived is an infinitesimal proportion of what must have been written in antiquity. By chance, part of the records written about 2500 BC on papyrus have survived from a temple at Abu Sir near Cairo. This archive gives a register of temple services for 1 month, in which are detailed all the duties to be performed as well as the names of the priests. It includes statements of the daily and monthly revenues of the temple, with deductions and expenditures. A tax survey survives of various plots of land in Middle Egypt, made during July and August of 1156 BC. This complicated register gives detailed particulars of the different institutions that owned the various tracts of land and their assessment for taxation purposes. Such are the surviving tips of a bureaucratic iceberg which must have been enormous. As always, the tombs of the ancient Egyptians are a great source of information. This one shows scribes at work recording the harvest. Men are measuring out the crop as it stands, with a rope knotted at standard intervals, and scribes are on hand to record the measurements. One of them can be seen in the middle of the work, clutching his writing palette. Another scribe with a writing palette in his hand brings up the rear. While the threshed grain is being measured in standard-sized tubs, a whole troop of scribes is standing by to write everything down. Activities like these were the justification for the bureaucracy of scribes. Without the abundant harvests and the need to administer them on a national scale, the scribes and their art of writing would have been neither possible nor necessary. One of them perches on the heap of grain, keeping the tally. Others are seated in a characteristic posture, their gowns drawn tight across their thighs to form a table on which they could put their writing materials. The highly organized Egyptian state could never have operated without the existence of an educated and busy legion of scribes, able to read, write, and calculate, and keep records. This class formed a bureaucratic elite in ancient Egypt, well aware of its privileges. The scribe, as one of them himself wrote, directs the work of everyone. For him there are no taxes, he pays his dues in writing. But in another classic work, the ideal of noblesse oblige is impressed upon the scribe and official.
Be not arrogant because of your knowledge, and be not overconfident because you are learned. Consult the ignorant as well as the informed. Goodly speech is rarer than precious turquoise, yet it may be found with the servant girls at their grindstones.
The training of a scribe began at a very early age and was completed by the time he reached manhood, at about 16. The wealth of school exercises that has survived shows that most scribes had to spend part of their time instructing pupils. Underlined on this papyrus from the British Museum are the corrections by the teacher of the work of his pupil. Papyrus was too precious for beginners to spoil. They wrote on wooden writing boards or on potsherds and flakes of stone. It sometimes happened that, through his training as a scribe, a man from humble circumstances reached high office. A notable case was Senenmut, the chief steward and general factotum of Queen Hatshepsut. He masterminded many of her great monuments, including her terraced temple at Thebes. The reward of talent is set forth in this school text. A man of worth is sought for, and you are found. The man that is skilled rises step by step until he has attained the position of a magistrate. What was the language that the ancient Egyptians spoke and wrote really like? The nearest thing to it is this, the language of the Copts, who are the Christian descendants of the ancient Egyptians. It is still read, though not understood, in their churches today, well over 5,000 years since its ancestral forms were first written down. On this cosmetic palette of the first pharaoh, from about 3000 BC, hieroglyphic writing is already in evidence. His name appears above his head in the two signs which make Nama. And on another very early piece, a little ivory label in the British Museum, the words, "First time of smiting the East," are recorded. Already at its first appearance, this system of writing shows a considerable development. The signs are used in two ways. They could be used directly to mean the objects which they actually represent, a human being, for example. To illustrate in terms of modern English the other way they could be used, we might draw a man and add to it a cluster of dates to mean the word mandate. Or we might show a bee and a leaf to mean belief. But in addition, the Egyptians invented an alphabet of 24 consonant signs to supplement the picture writing and remove ambiguities. Egyptian hieroglyphs are the most beautiful form of writing ever devised, and it is probably its aesthetic qualities as well as its hallowed tradition that kept it in use for so long. It was a form of writing that remained in use for 3,500 years, and the last hieroglyphs were carved as late as 394 AD. In the high periods of Egyptian culture, hieroglyphic writing reveals the same elegant proportions and drawing as the contemporary reliefs of which it is but a specialized version. But at the end of its life, in the Ptolemaic and Roman periods, when it was employed as an esoteric mystery, hieroglyphic writing displays remarkably ugly forms and a confused layout. Alongside the hieroglyphs, a more flowing form of writing suitable for the rapid tracing of a pen over papyrus was also devised at an early stage. This script, called hieratic, was employed for most of the business and literary documents. An even more cursive script followed it in the 7th century BC. This demotic writing continued in use until the middle of the 5th century AD. It was through his command of writing in the hieratic and the hieroglyphic scripts that the scribe for so long made ancient Egypt the most highly organized and prosperous state in the Near East. The scribes themselves were fully aware of their own importance to Egypt. In a papyrus of the 13th century BC, now in the British Museum, one of their number delivered this eulogy upon his fellow scribes. It could well stand today. Their monuments have crumbled in pieces. Their mortuary priests have gone. Their tombstones are covered with sand. Their chambers forgotten. But their names are pronounced because of the good books that they wrote, and their memory is forevermore.